Hello and welcome to this special edition of France in Focus. Now right now it's exam time, and that means some young people are preparing for their baccalaureate high school qualifications, while others swat up to take the entry test for the Grand Ecoles. Now France's top-ranking universities are notoriously tough to get into, but once you're there, a glittering career tends to lie ahead. In this programme, we step inside the high end of higher education and ask if it isn't all a little bit elitist. Coming up, public intellectuals, captains of industry, politicians and journalists, many of France's great and good studied at the Grand Ecoles. We discover who went where. One school here in Paris says the profile of its students is changing thanks to a scheme to open up places to young people from France's troubled suburbs. And overseas students are increasingly sought out by admissions tutors, especially if they come from China. We found out why. Well, just 5% of French higher education students pass through the Grand Ecoles, but for decades, many of those who've ended up running the country have spent their formative years there.
François Hollande and Ségolène Royal's partnership in life and politics first began at the École nationale d'administration. Although they parted ways romantically, the Socialist Party members maintained an enduring political alliance. He went on to become French president and she a minister. Two other presidents of the Fifth Republic are ENA graduates, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing and Jacques Chirac. Founded in 1945 by Charles de Gaulle to prepare the cream of the crop for passage into France's civil service, with an intake of around 100 a year, ENA is both revered as a symbol of French meritocracy and reviled as a machine for manufacturing clones. It's just one of the country's elite universities. Polytechnique is another top-tier institution. Among its famous graduates, French MP Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet. But are France's elite universities so exclusive that access is almost a birthright? NKM's brother Pierre Kosciusko-Morizet graduated from HEC Paris, one of the foremost business schools in the world, and went on to establish the third-ranked e-commerce site in France. Statistics paint a picture of unequal access to elite education among France's rich and poor. 80% of the country's top executives graduated from its elite business universities, while only 5% of the admission pool are from working-class backgrounds. A disparity that some have tried to bridge. Sciences Po and Polytechnique have set up quotas with schools in difficult neighbourhoods. But are France's elite always born from its exclusive schools? There are exceptions, even at the highest levels of French public life. Take Nicolas Sarkozy, the son of Hungarian immigrants. He went on to become a lawyer and then president. Although he gained entry into Sciences Po, he didn't graduate, let down by his failure to grasp the English language.
You are welcome to invest in France.
With so many of France's movers and shakers attending the Grand Ecoles, they've long been accused of nurturing a tight-knit elite from a narrow social background. Critics say they don't represent the France of today, they're locking out potential for tomorrow, and they need reform. We met an Englishman who's taught at Sciences Po University here in Paris and written 2 books on the subject. Peter Gumbel, your books are called They Shoot School Kids, Don't They? And France Has Got Talent, The Woeful Consequences of French Elitism. You don't sound very impressed.
There is a very tough culture, a very tough, very selective culture, which may or may not be okay for the kids who do very well, but is terrible for everybody else. And when you get into the university system, there's a twin track. There is a very, very small elite minority that goes on to the Grand Ecoles, and then everybody else who goes on to the universities. The universities are badly funded, overcrowded, and really not very good at all, and there's a very high dropout rate. The Grand Ecoles are very good, but extremely difficult to get into.
And what about the social backgrounds of students going through those two kind of parallel systems? Is that a criticism you make as well?
You have, on the one hand, a very wonderful vision of French education as being meritocratic, where anybody can rise to the top of French society, whatever their background, by virtue of their brilliance, essentially. And the reality is that kids from lower class and middle class backgrounds living in difficult areas of France almost never get into these really good schools.
Is it really any worse here in France than, for example, Oxbridge in the United Kingdom or the Ivy League universities in the United States?
What has changed in England and also in the States is that it's no longer where you went to university, it's what you've done afterwards, how good you are actually on the job. And if you look, for example, at the number of CEOs in Britain of the FT 100 who went to Oxford and Cambridge, 25 years ago, you were at the 70% mark. Now you're down to 20%. In both Britain and in the United States and in other countries too, there's this idea that you need a greater social diversity in your elites running the country. That hasn't happened in France. And one of my major criticisms is that the French elite is very much what they call the pensée unique. They think alike, they went to the same schools, they have the same sort of family backgrounds. And when you are confronted by a situation in the world as you are today, where you suddenly have this globalization, you suddenly have things you don't understand, having everybody coming from the same background is actually a major disadvantage.
You're talking about a system there which sounds blocked. A lot has been written in general about the stasis in France. Do you see change coming across the board, but particularly in the education system?
Yes, I mean, what is interesting is especially the opening to the outside world, that you have a lot of foreign students now coming into the Grand Ecoles, and you have the Grand Ecoles students going to international universities. And that changes the nature. It becomes much less Frenchified and a little bit more open. But what happens is it's the stage after that needs to change now. It's the transmission from the university or the Grand École into the workplace that has to change, so that it's not just the people from the Grand École who get the best jobs.
Well, faced with criticism like that, Sciences Po University has been shaking up its admissions procedure. Since 2001, it's been admitting students from disadvantaged backgrounds, and that's meant embracing something long regarded as taboo here in France, positive discrimination.
Mariam works in pharmaceuticals in Dubai. 10 years ago, she left her badly performing school for one of the best universities in France, Sciences Po. Letitia has a similar story. She went from a poor Paris suburb to having her own law firm, a career not envisaged by her school teachers.
It seemed totally inaccessible. At school, they encouraged us to do technical qualifications instead of higher academic exams.
Things changed for Letitia in 2003 when she was chosen as a candidate for Sciences Po as part of the university's drive to recruit more bright students from failing schools.
There were definitely those who were behind us and those who were against us. People used to heckle us in the corridors. If we failed, we were treated differently from other students. That was the moment I decided, instead of giving up, to fully embrace my situation and go into schools to talk to students about Sciences Po, to stress to them how important it is to apply and to be ambitious.
In 14 years, 1,300 students from failing schools have attended this Centre of Excellence. They now account for 16% of the yearly intake.
On est très très attentif à leur personnalité.
We pay a lot of attention to their personalities. Do they have initiative? It's an essential aspect of our recruitment criteria to this program.
Graduates of the program will have the same employment and salary level as their peers, but they're still very much in the minority. Over 80% of Sciences Po's first-year students still come from wealthy families.
Whereas the Grand École grapple with globalisation, they're reaching out to students from overseas. China is a major source of talent, and young people from there have found themselves at the centre of an important exchange. They offer a valuable link with businesses back home, and French companies are only too keen to reap the rewards.
Getting the folds and tucks just right is important when your uniform's as formal as this. 23-year-old Yuan Zong is a student at the École Polytechnique, and she's embraced the pomp and ceremony. Like all the students at this prestigious engineering school, she's received a made-to-measure formal uniform. It includes a sword and a bicorn hat. In China, she had some of the highest grades in maths. She chose to come to France to continue her studies.
For 6 months, I was torn between the American universities and Polytechnique. Finally, I chose Polytechnique because of the tradition, the history and the experience offered by the institution. It's just unique, and you can't find that anywhere else in the world.
Every year, 30 of China's highest achieving students enroll at the École Polytechnique, and not only for the academic prestige, there's also a financial interest. Their studies are financed by the French state. Every year, a total of some 640,000 euros are allocated to scholarships for Chinese students. As a result, these cherry-picked international exchange students are VIPs of sorts, with many schools providing Chinese-speaking assistance available 24/7.
Don't forget to send the photos to your parents.
One of the capital's business schools has seen a tenfold rise in Chinese students over the last 10 years, thanks to bold recruitment campaigns. They say that attracting the crème de la crème is paramount wherever they come from.
For us, having the best students is just fundamental, because they are the future managers of French companies who will be able to improve their performance in the market.
Companies are also interested in taking advantage of these international partnerships. Aria Technologies is already reaping the benefits. The firm specialises in surveying air quality. They've been able to sign important contracts in China, all thanks to Mr. Chong. He studied engineering in France, and since he's been with them, the company's won over a number of new markets. Mr. Chong's generated 700,000 euros in Chinese contracts in less than 3 years. His employers are confident about the future.
We absolutely have to have a point of contact in China, otherwise we don't do business with them. We're counting on him now to develop our interests there. We're looking at sums of between 2 and 3 million euros in the years to come.
When these students return to China, links with France remain important. Many of them are employed in French companies, like Qi Zhen. After 4 years at university in Grenoble, he now works for the Loire region as a representative in China, where he imports French horses.
I'm Chinese and I know France and its culture really well. And I know about horses too, now. So I think that I'm a great middleman. I think I can bring certain advantages.
Like Qi Zhen, more than 31,000 Chinese students have come to study in France, but France is only the 6th destination of choice, well behind English-speaking countries.
That's it for this special edition of France in Focus. Thanks ever so much for watching, and do stay with us here on France 24.